And joining us now, great to welcome a woman who's written really a fascinating book about the White House and the residents of the White House. That's the title of the book, The Residents. We're going to find all about it. You've seen her on Bloomberg News. She's also reported for Business Week. We're joined today by Kate Anderson Brower from up in the nation's capital today. And Kate, good to talk with you. How are you?
Oh, good. Thank you for having me on, Doug.
Yeah, great to have a chance to talk. I had an opportunity to read through the book. I only got it like a day or so ago, but I read it real fast. But I don't like to read too quickly because you had some great stories in there, and you really tell some great stories about the residents of the White House going back to really the Kennedy administration, right?
Yeah, I did 10 presidents over 50 years, so from President Kennedy to President Obama. And I got the idea when I was actually on maternity leave when our first child was born in 2012, and I was watching Downton Abbey, binge watching it at 2 and 3 in the morning with a baby who wouldn't sleep. And it reminded me a lot about a lunch that I was invited to with the First Lady, and it was a really small lunch, and we were, the women who cover the First Lady, it is mostly women, were escorted into this beautiful room on the state floor of the White House, and I had been in the White House, more than 100 times covering different events, and I had never been in this room, and it's the old family dining room. It's very elegant, relatively small for the White House, and a butler came in and out and was serving us, champagne on a silver tray, and I was a reporter used to eating like a paper bag lunch, in the basement of the White House where the reporters hang out, so it was very elegant, and it made me think, who are these people who are really the supporting cast at the White House? And I just started making some phone calls, and really was amazed at a lot of them. I interviewed more than 50 former resident staffers, more than 100 people for the book, including top advisors like Andy Card, Reggie Love, who was an Obama, personal aide, and it was an amazing journey. But really, talking to these resident staffers was the highlight because they just have incredible stories that they've never shared with anyone before.
Yeah, I remember as a kid on TV, a little kid. I remember I think one of the Nixon daughters got married, and you got to see kind of the pomp and circumstance of the White House with the wedding there, but you didn't get to see a lot of it. You see obviously the Oval Office, portrayed on TV, but you don't get to see the actual room. So it's fascinating to see what goes on in the living quarters.
Right. It's funny. One of the butlers showed me a piece of wedding cake from that wedding that he had saved.
Oh, really?
It was rock hard, but he saved a piece of Patricia Nixon's wedding cake, and I interviewed her for the book, and she just talked about how wonderful the staff was during her father's, terrible, going through Watergate. It was a tough time for them, and the staff said it was even worse watching him deteriorate over years during the Watergate investigation than even JFK's assassination, because they felt so helpless. There was nothing they could do to help make them feel better, and the staff is just fiercely loyal to each first family they serve, and they're not partisan. They stay on from one administration to the next, and their job is to make each first family feel as comfortable as possible in this very public, private home.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised as to the details you have in the book. A lot of these staffers, like you said, have been there for many, many years, many different administrations. But the pay really isn't that great, right? I mean, it's okay, but they don't get. They're not. We kind of tend to think everybody that works in there makes a lot of money, but they don't.
No, they don't. I mean, the executive chef is going to make probably one of the highest salaries, and one of the executive pastry chefs told me, look, I was fielding calls for $500,000 working at these incredible hotels around the country and the world, but he turned them down because he said this job was just made for me, which I think is really sweet. I mean, these people during 9/11, there are some stories in the book about how they felt like there was a bullseye on them, and they really left the White House running for their lives, and none of them quit. And Maura Bush told me that just meant so much to her, because even after 9/11, even when they thought that they might, die, they stayed, and they didn't want to, give up their post. They had counselors came in from Bethesda Naval Hospital to talk to the staffers, and one of them told me he would have panic attacks in the shower before coming to work after 9/11. And I think it speaks a lot to the loyalty of the staff that none of them quit.
Yeah, I think you had one interview with somebody there that's been there from the Kennedy administration, right? Just retired not long ago?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, yeah, even Bill Hamilton started in the Eisenhower administration, which is incredible. It's incredible. He was there from 1958 to 2013, the longest-serving, modern, relatively recent resident staffer. And he just retired. He just had a party, for his retirement in 2013. And it's really incredible that they stay on for so long. I mean, there's a cast of characters in the opening of my book so that I make it easy to figure out their positions and how long they were there. And I don't think there's a single one that was there for any less than 15 years,
Did you find it difficult? Because part of their job, the staffers, is to not talk to anybody, keep the secret. So was that a difficult process to get them to open up and talk about what went on?
Mm-hmm. It was difficult. I mean, I really, this is really a tribute to them and the work that they do. That they're really the supporting cast. They get very little attention, and they don't want the attention. There's an unwritten rule. They told me that they stayed in the background, and they said we're trained to keep what goes on inside the White House. And so it took a year and a half to really get to know some of them. I would oftentimes I would get to talking to one of them who would then put in a good word for me, and they would, with one of their colleagues, and say, "Oh yeah, I heard about you. You're the one who's working on this book." And I think it helped that I kind of, built those relationships, and they knew that I wasn't doing anything scurrilous. That this is a tribute to them, really.
Yeah, you've been part of the press corps, so they probably have seen you around, so they had more trust in you at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Well, a lot of them leave and they really unplug. Like, one of them was in Florida who I would interview, and another one retired to the beach in Delaware. And they don't really stay. Some of them are still in D.C. and in the suburbs of D.C. for sure, but they're not political, and so they're not plugged in that way. Some of them don't even have email that they use a lot. I mean, I'm also talking about people who are older and from a different generation, and I think some of them wanted to share their stories because they thought, here's an opportunity to really talk about my family and my life, because I would always ask them, this one butler, James Jeffries, started working in the Eisenhower administration when he was just 17 years old, and he still works part-time at the White House, and 9 family members of his have worked at the White House. And that's just an incredible history that I think he wanted to share with people. Why not?
Get some great stories of the people from the first ladies and the presidents down the line, how they treated the staff, and most of them treated the staff well. But once in a while, I guess I know you have a story about Nancy Reagan. She could be a little difficult, right?
Yeah, I mean, she I don't know if that's too surprising to people. I mean, she was a perfectionist, and some of the staffers said they liked working for her because you always knew what you were going to get, and that made them feel like they could make her happy. But others felt like it was a little bit tough. I mean, there's a story in there where the pastry chef is, he's, 2 days before a state dinner, and he's trying to get her to tell him what kind of dessert she wants, and she rejects 2 desserts, and he finally goes up to her. She's having lunch with President Reagan in the solarium, which is kind of their informal family room, and he says, well, here, he presents this 3rd dessert, and she says, no, I don't really like that, and Ronald Reagan says, honey, that's terrific. Let's do that. And she said, Ronnie, just eat your soup. This isn't your concern. And, this chef told me that he just bowed his head and kept eating. But, yes, she definitely knew what she wanted. And finally she decided she wanted him to make this elaborate sugar baskets that would take a long time, and he said, but Mrs. Reagan, there are only 2 days left, and she said, well, there are 2 days and 2 nights.
That's right.
And and so he did it. He said he worked really long hours, and he was so proud of himself because afterwards she was very happy with what he did and thanked him for it. So I mean, they rose to the challenge.
In contrasting that, Ronald Reagan, who most people knew as a very friendly kind of guy, he liked talking to the staff. Right? A lot of times, his wife would say, don't talk too much, but he liked that, didn't he?
Right. He did. I mean, it got to the point where the staff would duck into other hallways or rooms to avoid him when they'd see him walking down the hallway because they just knew they'd get stuck in a conversation for 20 minutes. And he stuck his head in the kitchen right before the U.S. started bombing Libya, and he said, boy, boys, I just want you to know we're about to bomb Libya. And the butler said, that's very nice, Mr. President. When would you like dinner? And the president paused and said, you'll have to ask my wife. And it's just funny that, you know, he would tell them things because he was chatty and they were standing there, but they really weren't interested in those issues. You know, they are there to serve. That's what they do, and they are so loyal to the institution of the American presidency, which is really incredible since Washington is just, you know, so bitterly divided these days, and it's very refreshing.
Yeah, President Johnson is another one that I'd heard stories that he could be tough, but you got some good ones. We can tell him now, but some good ones in the book about him. He could really be an SOB, couldn't he?
Yeah, he was tough. He was really, well, he was obsessed with the shower, and so there's a long saga about the shower.
But he was an arm twister in Congress, and I guess he did that with the staff, too, occasionally, right?
He did. It's kind of a, you know, bittersweet. I mean, there were some great relationships he had with staffers, but yes, he was hard to please.
He would grade
when
them,
it came
right?
to the shower.
Give him a daily grade. That's tough.
He would, yeah. I mean, he started his career as a teacher, and they said it kind of went on through his time at the White House. He'd poke his head into different shops in the basement where the carpenters worked and electricians, and he would say, you know, you get a B today, you get an F, and it was ridiculous. I mean, and it's funny to me that he had the time or even wanted to do that, you know, when he was dealing with Vietnam and everything else. So it's humanizing, I think, in a way.
And we won't get into it now. We'll let the folks read it. But a good tease would be you got a lot on the Clintons and the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. So I'm sure that'll get a lot of people to buy the book.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster ride with the Clintons in the White House. But again, I mean, I do think it's humanizing. I mean, look, she was mad about you know, being humiliated, and I think most women would have reacted in the same way, right?
Oh, I don't blame her for. Well, you have a story in there about her throwing a book, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Well, the name of the book is The Residents, and great historical anecdotes in there about the residents of the White House, inside the private world of the White House is the full title. We've been talking with Kate Anderson Brower today. And Kate, I know the book just came out, doing well. Do you want to direct people to a website? I know they can order it on our website, but do you have a website?
Well, it's available on Amazon. It's also available at Barnes & Noble on their websites and in stores, and we are shipping more books out as we speak. It's selling really well, and I am very, very excited about it.
Great. Kate, appreciate you talking to us. I know it was a busy day for you, but enjoyed chatting with you, and hopefully we can do it again. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Doug.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or Doug Miles...